Say the Semantics, episode 274. It is September 24th, 2024. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Tuesday, a lovely Tuesday afternoon / evening. It's been nice. It's been nice. Yesterday was a bit, it was hot. It kind of went back to the sort of like summer heat, which I was kind of expecting that to happen in September. Maybe that's kind of like the final gasp of summer before we finally, fully transition into the fall. But yeah, I'm hoping the weather in October and kind of in general for the fall is going to be nice. Because that is one of the things that I'm most looking forward to in the next season, in the next period of time. But I've been enjoying myself, just kind of going on little walks here and there, like I sort of am now, and just taking advantage of that. It's been a pretty nice little weekend. Kind of quiet. It's been surprisingly quiet on my end, which has been nice, just in general. And I've kind of been able to enjoy some time, catching up on some stuff. I was able to finish Attack on Titan this weekend. I finished Unicorn Overlord. Did I talk about that? I forgot if I mentioned that I finished it. I don't quite remember if I talked about that last week. And I also finished playing a very short little game, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Just sort of like kind of part of it in anticipation of really wanting to kind of delve into Echoes of Wisdom, which I anticipate I'm going to pick up on Friday, I think. And just kind of be playing that during the weekend, starting on Friday. So I'm like clearing my plate of the things that I've been wanting to finish or complete on my end. Yeah, I don't remember if I talked about Unicorn Overlord last week. I my memory is just not. It's kind of escaping me right now. But yeah, I finished it. I had a great time with it. I think I already talked about it. I'm not sure. I'm a jumbled mess. But if I'm rephrasing, just talking about it again, I apologize. But I finished it. When did I finish it? Friday, I think. And I had a great time with it. It was definitely one of the. It was nice getting back into kind of the strategy RPG world of things. Since it's been a while, really the last thing. I mentioned 13 Sentinels sort of falling into that vein, but that game really is more of a, story kind of visual novel game with the sort of strategy RPG side of things sort of taking a bit of a kind of a, secondary level of importance in the hierarchy. I think it is still like really fun. The gameplay itself, it is fun, but it is definitely not it's not the focal point of the game. So really it's been since I think 3 Houses since I've played something like that. And it was nice. It was really nice to get into kind of the depths of a strategy RPG, and kind of enjoying it. I think this just kind of happens as with tactical games. I think, and this happens with me. This happened with me in Fire Emblem and in Triangle Strategy, where you kind of just stick to a certain like strategy basically. If you have something that's just just has worked, you kind of tend to stick with it. I don't play on the highest difficulty, rarely. I'm just not that good. I enjoy these types of games, but I am just not good with it. And I end up sticking to kind of like the medium difficulty, which is called tactical. And even then it is fairly reasonable and fairly easy to a certain extent. However, you do reach this almost at the very, very end of the game. You reach this like huge kind of this huge gap. There's this like one fight between one unit basically, and you really need to like strategize to find which unit of yours and the combinations of the characters that you can choose from fit the best and work the best in this fight. And I definitely struggled with it, and it was a little frustrating because it became such like it became such like a huge jump from what it was, which felt pretty easy, and it became kind of like an actual struggle, you know what I mean? Afterwards, the game did kind of, it just sort of went back to what it was before. But just at that one specific point, it was just like, this is crazy. Where did this come from, And you have to really try to figure out like what works best. You have to figure out the best combination of characters. I actually had to kind of research like what had to look up like what the best which characters would work best in this fight. And I was kind of like, okay, I think I am doing the best I can. I used some additional items and stuff I used up just a bunch of my items to essentially give the character stat boosts, and eventually that all kind of worked out. But it was just kind of funny how much of a just how much of like a level hike, level kind of block what it felt like, right? And you had to almost really kind of strategize which what worked best. So it was kind of just funny coming across that. But overall, I had a really great time with this game. I think that it sort of satisfied my itch for strategy and that kind of thing, and it's something that I've been, I've mentioned this before, but I've been really kind of missing that type of game. And I looked at something like Fire Emblem Engage, and it just wasn't exactly the most appealing to me, just because I heard the story is really not that great. But in the case of Unicorn Overlord, the story really isn't all that interesting. It really was kind of the gameplay and all of these other aspects. And so if I'm like forgiving with this game, it's possible that I might look at something like Engage and consider getting it. But it's just that with the Fire Emblem franchise in general, like I think that I found the story and the characters and the interactions to be much more to be really interesting and appealing, at least on the on the side of something like Awakening or Three Houses. So I think with Engage, just the way that I've heard the story is constructed, and the fact that it's kind of like it is much more of a celebration of the entirety of the series, where it just doesn't really have a clear focus on character. That kind of pushes me away from it a little bit, you know what I mean? But it is possible where the strategy side of things might be more just might be more fun, just might be enough to push me over the edge and, actually get into it. So it's something that I've considered, it really is not high on top of my list of games that I want to get anytime soon. But if I am, craving something strategy, it's possible that I might, look into getting it and playing it and see, give kind of my own thoughts on it, and, build my own opinion about the game. It's possible that I might just end up loving it as much as I loved Unicorn Overlord. So I don't know. It's giving me like a bit more to think about in terms of what other options are out there in terms of strategy RPGs, and not just limiting myself to the ones where it is critically critically well received, but also just ones that might kind of satiate that part of my brain that enjoys the strategy aspect of it, that kind of, the puzzle solving, part of my brain, and just really give some other ones a shot as well, because there are others out there, but I just have not really been it just hasn't really been something that I've put too much attention to. But yeah, Unicorn Overload, great game. I really felt that I completed everything that I wanted to do, and had a great time with it. I really feel like I already talked about this, but who cares? Whatever. It's been a pretty, there's a lot of things that have already happened this week, and in particular today, in terms of just gaming news and stuff. So today there was a state of play for PlayStation earlier, and I didn't really catch any of it, but I did see, I did kind of see the summary, the just like the summary of all of the games that are coming out. And I know it is funny for someone like myself, who really has no interest in getting into kind of the PlayStation ecosystem, if you want to call it that. And I've already explained many times why I'm not really interested at this point in time to get like a PlayStation 5. But I do like to keep up to date on just like the, what's going on in the, contemporary news, and what things might be interesting to kind of the more mass audience, for people who are more so kind of Sony fans, and really kind of like brings them in. And it seemed like it was a pretty decent showcase. It seemed like they brought on some pretty, they announced some pretty good titles. I think the big one being Ghost of Yote, which is the sequel to Ghosts of Tsushima, and I think that is like one game / series now that I would definitely consider getting into, if I did own a PlayStation. So some points there for them, if it were to kind of I guess convert me into someone getting a PlayStation. That series would definitely be a factor in that. It looks really great. The game looks beautiful. It looks really cool. There's a lot of historical kind of aspects of it that interests me about kind of old Japan and everything. And I think it looks really great, and it's coming out next year, looks like. So that's definitely something that should really kind of have players excited. Other games, there was really nothing else from the showcase or I guess rather the presentation that really caught my attention. Nothing really too much there. It is really funny, just the Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. It's just like one of those instances where it's like, okay, is this really necessary? Similar to like, a Last of Us remaster. Is this really, do we really need this? Is it really necessary? I think it is kind of funny to look at that, and and just like it just sort of is like goes right in line with a lot of the maybe some of the more some of the issues that people have had with PlayStation in this generation. The fact that there has been just kind of a lack of PlayStation exclusives and all of these things, and it is just kind of the age and the generation of remasters and remakes and that kind of thing. And I don't know, it's just sort of funny that they sort of are continuing to prove that point being made. But I just think it looks like a really good game. It looks really nice. I've never really looked too much into it, but it looks nice. It looks really nice. Outside of just kind of the big reveal at the end, not a whole lot to really that really caught my attention for me personally. But it seems that there are some games for PlayStation. Okay, I can admit that there are some games, just not too many. If you can just probably you can get a good chunk of stuff with just your PS4. So that might be the play here. It's like if I'm not able to, it's like if I am really interested in playing some of kind of the PlayStation classics, if you want to call it that, I could really just get a PS4, right? And play through those there. But that's just if I really wanted to do something like that. But at this point, I'm not. Again, just not as not the most interested. It is not like high on the list of priorities for me. Um, Level 5 is a developer that has developed some of my favorite games, including Ni no Kuni, at least the DS version for me. Um, they developer for Dragon Quest 8. Um, what else? Professor Layton. There's a lot of other stuff. And speaking of Professor Layton, they showed a new trailer for the new game that's going to be coming out next year, and it looks good. It looks good. It looks. I think it looks like they're utilizing more of the 3D models versus like the 2D art style, which is fine. I think it makes sense for kind of the modern console. So far, I think it looks like it's only been announced for Switch, but I'm assuming it'll probably go multi-platform later on. And 2025, it could be something where it is cross-gen between Switch 1 and Switch 2. We'll see about that, but it feels likely that it could be the case. And I watched the trailer like right after work, and it was really nice to hear the music. It really kind of brought me back. I've only played the first two games. I've played on the DS, and I've been meaning to maybe just like I've been kind of looking around to see if I could get like a copy of the third DS game, because I heard that one is really good and considered like one of the best in the series. But I just haven't gotten around to it. And there's also I think a couple of 3DS titles as well. So I haven't I'm not like the biggest Layton fan, but I do have some fond memories of playing through the first game, especially, and I enjoyed my time with the second one as well. But it was nice to it was nice. It's nice to hear that Layton is kind of back in the picture, and I think I may consider picking this up when it does launch. But yeah, just like hearing kind of the music, the sort of the main theme, sort of like a remix of the main theme, was really nice. And the music for the Layton series in general is fantastic. Is really nice. I sometimes go back and just listen to the original soundtrack just to just kind of like, oh yeah, this is some good stuff right here. The qualms I think I have, this isn't about really Layton. This is more so with Level 5 as a studio. I think it's been pretty well discussed and well documented that the Level 5 is just not a very well managed publisher slash developer. It seems like they have a lot of great IP, but they just are not good at it. Just the manner in which they, put these out is just not. It's not like frequent at all. Like I haven't heard of a Layton game in forever. I haven't heard of something like Yokai Watch. It looks like they're doing something completely different that's like similar to Yokai Watch, but it just doesn't look very good. It's like with ghosts. It's basically like yokai and spirits, but with ghosts, and they have these like weird gimmicks where they brought in like the pineapple apple guy, pen guy. If you know what that is, it's like an old YouTube meme. And for some reason they're like bringing him to do a dance, or they're introducing like a character that is sort of reflected of him and this meme, and it just feels like I don't know what is this game? What is this game? What is this marketing? Like why what is with all the dances? It just feels so, I don't know, unnecessary. And then also the fact there's another game that they announced a while back, which is called Deco Police. I'm not super interested in it. It looks cool. It looks kind of interesting. Turn-based combat, whatever. That's cool. Kind of up my alley, but just I don't know, maybe the art style and just the premise hasn't really clicked with me. The game was delayed to 2026, which is insanity. Like that is just kind of, I don't know. It's sort of absurd. It is kind of, it is a little bit in line with something like Silk Song, which is announced just way too early. And I mean, in the case of Silk Song, it's like, is this game even real? Like we don't even know. But with this Deco Police game, they also announced it just way too early. I think it was like a couple of years ago, like 2022 or something when they first announced it, and delaying it by an additional year is pretty, I don't know, that's pretty rough. It's pretty bad. I mean, it's just, that's kind of, it's just an issue of announcing a game too early, really. I think that's kind of what it comes down to, and mismanaged expectations. But I mean, just the fact that they said 2026, like, it just doesn't, like, you don't even really, if it's not within a year, you don't register it. There's a reason why the GTA trailer came out this year and said 2025. Like, you cannot, like, you can't say that this game is coming out in 2026, 27. Like, that's ridiculous to kind of expect your consumers to like wait for that long. Like, even if they can wait, it's just like, you go, you see it with a lot of other franchises and games where there is kind of this expectation for a new game, and the fact that just the developers or whatever, they just don't announce it for forever, you start to go a little crazy. You know what I mean? So there has to be better just communication on their front, on telling, and this is for a game that I'm not even really interested in at all, but it does make me feel for the people that have been waiting for it. It just sucks to hear something like that. So it's just not great all around. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, regardless of how good, maybe I didn't even look at the trailer, but I just heard about the announcement. Like, regardless of how good the game looks, it's like, oh, we're adding all of these things. It's like, okay, we get it, and that's cool, but to further push it down the line is a little ridiculous. And I think I don't know, it's just bad. It's just a bad practice, and I don't know. It's an issue with there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of things why it is bad. Like I said, just the fact of announcing a game too early. The fact that development cycles take longer and longer than they used to. It's a lot of things that kind of are causing this. There's a lot of parties that need to just do better about talking, the people that are actually making the game versus the marketers, and then versus the people, the executives who make like the final decisions. Like, all of these things kind of need to work in tandem. And I think in the case of level 5, excuse me, it just doesn't seem like it's working very well. So yeah, there's been a good amount of kind of a little fervor going on, little things going on here and there in the gaming world. I think TGS, or Tokyo Game Show, is this week, which it's not something that I've really paid attention to too much, but recently, as I have gotten a bit more, I guess, conscious or aware of game news and game media and that kind of thing, and just been more interested in how things operate. It is something that I might pay attention to. I'm wondering, what do the announcements of games at Tokyo Game Show have any effect on on consumers as us? Is like, does it give us more excitement? Does it give more, does it give us more in terms of what we want? Does it tell us more? Is it really, is it something that just because it's sort of been kind of like a tradition for such a long time that it kind of continues going on? And is it something that has, I don't know, proven to be effective in like marketing and that kind of thing? Is it like a good show? I have no idea because I never really watched it. But I am interested to kind of see what they announce there, if they announce anything new, or if they're just going to showcase the games that have already been announced, if there are like any surprises or whatever. It's just sort of, I don't know, it's not the most like interesting thing to me, but it will be kind of like the first time that I've really been looking at it and seeing what comes out of it and seeing if it is something that has a kind of like an effect on the rest of the industry, or if it's just kind of like another show. But it does have like it's, Tokyo Game Show, like it feels like it's pretty pretty significant. So anyways, I like I said, this weekend finishing up Unicorn Overlord, finished Attack on Titan, which I thought was good, and I also sort of I've been, there's a game that I've been meaning to play for, I mean, there's a lot of games that I've been, wanting to play, and I've been sort of waiting to play. I've talked about, wanting certain games remastered, remaked, or just kind of ported over to the Switch. And there's one game that I've been really wanting to play for the longest time, ever since I really heard about it. Since way back, I think it's like when did this game come out? 2011, 2012, something like that. So more than a decade ago, since the game was first released. And it was exclusive to the PlayStation 3, so way back then. And I think it won, it won a good amount of awards during that year. The game Journey, and I think I've touched upon it before. I think I've talked about Journey before. It is kind of it really is sort of like the quintessential indie artsy kind of game. And I think a lot of other indie titles have taken inspiration from Journey and kind of incorporated that sort of storytelling style, and the fact that there is like basically no dialogue and no text or anything like that. It is all image. It is all it is all just there's no like flavor text or anything like that. It is all just kind of in the animation. It's kind of like watching sort of like a short movie, or just like a movie in general. If you've seen like short films, sometimes where there's like no dialogue and that kind of thing, that's sort of like the feel that you get for like short animated movies with no dialogue. This is sort of what you get with this. Or you can think of something like, Fantasian, from Disney, something along those lines, where there's no, there's really little to no dialogue. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was beautiful. It really, is kind of, this, there's a lot to, I'm sure if you like kind of take it piece by piece and you look at the things that certain items or certain, I guess characters, what they like symbolize and that kind of thing, you can kind of, you could figure out your own interpretation of what the story represents. And there's a lot of ways to look at it as well, in terms of, your character, or you can sort of, it can be a reflection of yourself, or you can be sort of like a, third person character, sort of view, third person, that is sort of like guiding your character to to reach a certain point, the end, the you know, the kind of the bridge to another existence. Like there's a lot of ways to interpret this game. But I think just the overall, like, starting from where you are kind of, you know, not really born. It doesn't really tell you where your character comes from. Like, you don't know if they're necessarily from, they're coming from like another land or something like that. But there's a reason why you have to make it to the top of this mountain and then kind of cross that plain to go somewhere else. And it is kind of this, at the end of the game, it's really short. I beat it in maybe like a couple hours. It's like the perfect kind of, you know, you could really play it through in one session. It's perfect for that. The game sort of implies that there's this kind of loop going on where new journey, you know, with these new journey characters, each of them have to make the journey, this sort of pilgrimage to reach reach the top of the mountain, whether it's, you know, a way for them to kind of transition into kind of the afterlife, or something else. It's, you know, that's kind of up to you to decide what that, you know, what that symbolizes, or what that kind of means to you. I think that the fact that there is no explicit explanation of what's going on, I think is, you know, a way for the player to, again, create their own interpretation of what this sort of journey represents. And I think it's beautiful. There's some just fantastic moments in this game that are short, but it's this kind of sense that you get where you're like flowing with the other sort of spirits, I want to call them, of this world, that are sort of helping guide you along your journey to reach the end. And you know, sort of really emphasizing that you're not alone, and you have, you know, despite the elements that you're battling against, despite certain certain antagonistic creatures that do exist, that, you know, they're not super frequent, but they do definitely pop up. Despite all of these factors, there are still things that may be tangible, intangible, that are kind of helping guide you to reach the end of this journey. And I think it's really beautiful. My understanding, and I think for the original PS3 release, I think it was like a really clear, there was a clear, like, emphasis on this connection where you can almost do kind of multiplayer, where you play alongside another, like, journey character and go along with them. I didn't include that option. I think if because I played it on my just to make it clear, I played it on my iPhone. They outside of PlayStation, they've only released it on, I think, Apple. So it's, you know, hopefully it gets, you know, released to other platforms as well. I don't know if it might be on PC. I'm not entirely sure. But I think if you have, like, the online capabilities turned on or whatever, just like the network turned on, you might have a chance to kind of journey essentially with another player. So I think that might have been, you know, kind of like an interesting thing to experience. But I sort of, you know, I understood the sort of the messaging of that inclusion, and despite me not interacting with other players, but I you know, interacting with the environment itself, I think, you know, gave me the sense that, you know, I was sort of being guided by, you know, other things, or helped being, you know, guided by other, you know, spirits or, other things that kind of exist in this world. And it's really beautiful. I'm happy that I was finally able to play this. I think this is just like it's the perfect, it really is like, if I do want to have the game in between the two big games, this is the type of game that I really that I really like, is just sort of having a really short, experience that still can have really, you can still have like a profound kind of connection with it. And I think it was really nice. It's hard for me. I think I would recommend, really anyone to try this out. See if it's up your alley. It's really, it's one of those, I think, and this might be, this might be a bit of a, a bit hyperbolic, because I think this is like right around the time that I started to really engage with video games more. And this is kind of like the time that I started to read stuff on websites like IGN and GameStop or GameSpot and that sort of thing. And I remember this game kind of popping up a lot in terms in those conversations and in those articles. But I think this game, like hearing about this game, listening to the music, was really kind of one of the first times where I started thinking about video games as kind of like an art, right? There is like a very clear sort of, direction with this game and how it presents itself. It's not very difficult. There's just the, there's the like the tapestry that you sort of complete as you make your journey. At the end of the game, they kind of like do a full sweep or circle, a view of kind of your journey and sort of it being represented by this like dot art, which is like really beautiful. So like everything kind of encompassing in this game is art in itself. And so you can kind of, I think I looked at this and I saw this and I was like, this is very, this feels like an art piece, right? It feels very just artsy. Some people might be like, this is sort of like artsy fartsy kind of thing. And I think maybe it was during that time as well where this sort of, I think maybe there was a bit more of a, just because of the way it was received by critics and received by just media and players in general. I think there was kind of like and while there may have been other games before this one that had, similar qualities, because of this game's success, I think it really, started to push, just kind of in the early 2010s, it really started to push kind of this idea of art, or video games being an art form. And I think that, while it's like, this game sort of has the qualities of something like like animation and that kind of thing, I think that it sort of brought this conversation about other games as well that don't fit into this kind of mold. And I think that's really great. I think that just even, starting the conversation and kind of continuing that conversation into other games as well, even if they are not the most, even if they're just like something along the lines of like popular games, like you can still find a way to discuss those things and look at them critically, look at like the story and those things critically. Like even something like Call of Duty, you can look at that and talk about that, whether it's like whether it's something where it is villainizing a certain group of people, whether it is sort of, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think there's a lot to really get into it, but normalizing violence and that kind of thing. There's a lot of ways to look at video games as an art form. It's not just limited to something like Journey, which was sort of designed with in mind of being akin to like a painting. So I feel it just seemed like after this game's release, it sort of opened up kind of this, it opened up the floodgates for looking at games in a critical eye, but also just appreciating what they kind of brought to the table, and looking at it with more reverence and more respect than maybe it used to be. Because really, like I'm, and I think about this sometimes. Like, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. But one of my English teachers in high school, and I may have brought this up a while back, but we were talking about, I don't know what we were talking about. We were just talking about different art forms, just like movies and and books, and obviously paintings and that kind of things. And I think it was either me or someone else like brought up, video games are art too. And he's like, no, no, video games are not art. and I think, and I'm curious what his thoughts are and what his thoughts would be if he did play something like Journey. You know what I mean? Because I think that I'm assuming he looks at something like a Call of Duty, like sort of the typical first person shooter games at that time that were much more popular, and seeing those and then kind of dismissing them because of that fact. And it's like it's weird, and it is kind of funny to see how sometimes the thing itself has to almost mimic or be similar to other art forms in order to be considered legitimate. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Like in the case of Journey, like I think it is like a beautiful piece of art, and it's also a beautiful game because you yourself are the one that's sort of like interacting with the environment. Like it is a true video game. But I do think it is funny how people have to, they have to sort of like, it has to be something that is familiar for them in order to then recognize something else and respect something else that might not be kind of in their wheelhouse of comfort. You know what I mean? And I do think it's sort of funny to to think about that. Again, I'm not really, I'm not like, I am not at all like disdained, or I don't have any hard feelings for my old teacher, but it is just sort of funny looking at it and thinking about that, because like you can look at it's the same with any new thing, whether it's like music or new age like cinema or something like that, or YouTube videos, or TikToks, those kinds of things. Like you can look at a lot of it just kind of maybe just comes from the perspective of someone who is from like an older generation, looking at it, not recognizing it, and feeling put off by it because it doesn't represent and it doesn't feel like something that they've already seen before, and what they already consider to be art, right? Because you can you can think of it's like I don't know, classical piano. That is like, oh, that's classical music. That is like music. And then if you look at just like the furthest from that demographic, like I don't know, pop music, whatever, and you can sort of like push that off because one, you might not, you don't like it, and you just don't like that kind of music, and you just want to like talk shit about it. But also the fact that you just are not accustomed to it. You aren't used to listening to that type of music because it sounds very foreign to you. And so in that instance, you label it as not, not art and not deserving of a critical lens, right? And I think that it's sort of, it's something that I work on, that I continue to kind of work on. Like sometimes I feel like I am dismissive of things that I don't really like. And I tend to not give it like a second thought, you know what I mean? But a lot of other people who might really enjoy something, there is like a community of people, like in, say like, certain type of music that I personally don't really care for. I don't know, I can't really think of any right now, but I don't know. There might be a whole community that looks at their, like a specific artist's music and really, delve into it and look at it critically and, enjoy aspects of it. And I don't know, there's just, even if you personally don't like it and you don't think it deserves the same level of respect that you give to something else, doesn't mean that there aren't other people that can do that. You know what I mean? Video games are still a very, very new medium. It's only been around for, less than a century. So there's still a lot of work that can be done in terms of, kind of criticisms and writings and musings over it, right? We have come a very long way. I think that, with kind of with stuff like YouTube and stuff, I've definitely seen, a lot more, even just within like the past, 5 years or something like that. I've definitely seen a lot more videos just kind of, and like video essays and stuff that, look at just even the most like mundane aspects of like video games and just like talking about it and analyzing it and stuff. And that might be more, one of the reasons why that's become more popular, and that's become a bit more, it's just been more present, is because just the way, the algorithm works and all that, these kinds of things, and the fact that more people can kind of enjoy longer form content, just to kind of listen to, which I do. I'm guilty of that. I do tend to, have like, longer essay videos kind of in the background while I work or do something else. I am one of those people. So one of the kind of the passive listeners. But I think that sort of it coincides with the fact that as time has gone along, there is just generally more exposure to looking at games critically and that kind of thing. I remember back in college, I did take a class that was sort of like a video game, literary or media analysis class, which I thought it was interesting. The professor they weren't the best, like no disrespect to them. It just wasn't it wasn't as interesting as I thought it could be. But it's like, you get these little things, you get these little seeds of, it's kind of like, planted, and those can kind of eventually grow into something more, where more people kind of engage with it. And and just like other games like Last of Us, I think is a pretty big example of an instance where the respectability of video games started to become much more apparent and really kind of brought to the forefront. So I think that, games that sort of focus more kind of on the narrative side of things and focus and are a bit more akin to something like a TV show. In the case of something like Last of Us, I think that sort of brings forward, more popularity and those kinds of things. It brings even further popularity into the genre itself, which I think is good. I think it's good to sort of have more people engage with the genre and maybe be interested in something that is more kind of narrative in nature, as opposed to, kind of the more typical, shooter games. But it's just sort of, it is, just thinking about journey and just that where we kind of have come from that point forward, I think is cool to see. It's cool to kind of see, the continued, there are, again, I know this might be not super relevant. There are a lot of issues with the industry, which I've talked about recently, and I've talked about quite a lot, I think. But in terms of the actual games themselves, I'm not talking about, executives and their decision making or anything like that. I just, in terms of the actual tangible, you know, art that is sort of being put out, I think there's just a lot out there to appreciate, and I'm looking forward to, sprinkling in some things similar to a journey game, in between my playthroughs of, some of the other bigger, RPGs, Zelda, whatever, just to supplement it and give me a bit more kind of appreciation for, these the smaller creators out there that are putting something a bit more niche that generally would not be something that it would kind of fit into kind of the mainstream mold in the gaming industry. But I really have just sort of it is really kind of cool to think about the progression of, this game onward, from that point on. It is Zelda week. It is Zelda week, which is really exciting. Again, I think I'm planning to I think I'm gonna pick up Echoes on Friday. I think that is the plan, and just really excited to get into that. In between, it's like in between then, it's like, man, what do I just like? Just like, do I just kind of sit around and wait, or do I want to, play through something else again? Because I thought that, I expected Journey to be, a short game. I just didn't expect it to be this short. So, I don't know. Maybe I could fit something else in between, or I'll just kind of go back to playing Slay the Spire or something along those lines to hold up some time before it's right around the corner. I just have to be a little patient, but I just am sort of like aching to to really get into something new. But that is right around the corner. That's right up on the horizon, and I'm looking forward to picking that up. Obviously, I'll be talking about that this weekend when I do eventually get into it. Give my kind of initial thoughts, and talk about maybe some more stuff if anything else pops up during the week in terms of gaming news or anything else that I'm interested in. So I'll hold off on any other topics for now and save that for this weekend. All right, recording this on Saturday, September 28th. It is it's a Saturday evening. It's very, nice and cool weather. It's been oh man, I've been bitching about this for a little bit now, but this period where you sort of expect it to be cooler and stuff has actually been kind of hot, especially this kind of past week or so. Today was a bit warmer as well, so yeah, not the biggest fan, but it has kind of mellowed out going into kind of the late afternoon, the evening, so that's been nice. But outside of that, yeah, there's that kind of feel of an Indian summer, if you want to call it that, which I'm not a fan of. I'm sure a lot of people are also not fans of. People are wanting some cooler weather, not 90-degree weather in late September going into October, but here we are. We just kind of deal with it, and we kind of move on with our lives and deal with it in the best way we can. It's been a pretty eventful kind of little weekend here. Just had some news pop up. Basketball, the NBA season is just around the corner, coming up next month, starting on the 22nd, I believe, is when opening night is. And we had a huge trade happen. Just went down yesterday, went down last night, just kind of out of the blue. Unless you're like really tuned in on, the beat writer side of things. This is just completely kind of just really unexpected. So Karl Anthony Towns was traded to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and I believe a protected first pick, something like that. Which is the immediate reaction, which was also my immediate reaction, coming from both fan bases, was what was the point of this trade for both teams? Like, how does this really benefit either side moving forward? And I think I listened to some podcasts and stuff today, after the trade went down, and I think there was some pretty good reasoning, at least on kind of the New York side of things. Minnesota will sort of see, like, outside of just it being a quote unquote salary dump of sorts to avoid the kind of additional taxation, for the ownership at like the second apron. Outside of that, it seems like a potential downgrade of sorts, going from, if you look at just kind of like an immediate position to position look, it is a downgrade going from Towns to Randall. Although Randall is like a good player and everything, it does seem to be kind of a downgrade in that aspect. They do get deeper by adding DiVincenzo as a potential starter for the team. But I think that just if you just kind of look at it surface level, it feels like Minnesota kind of went on. It was just kind of like a really interesting slant for them, just considering the success that they did have last year going to the Western Conference Finals. But maybe looking at it from their perspective, from management's perspective, they felt maybe this group had like a ceiling, which I also feel too. They were really good, but maybe if you sort of take into account, Anthony Edwards' potential growth into superstardom, and him essentially becoming his team, maybe this was sort of like a way to extend, consecutive successful seasons, even if it might not result in them getting like a championship, just sort of like, giving more longevity for Edwards to have success moving forward and for his team. You know what I mean? That I think is maybe, I don't know, that feels like the most reasonable way of looking at it. And that was something that I was thinking, really last year as well. I think especially when Towns did go out for like that little stretch, and Minnesota did sort of have, did have success and were able to get to like a number one seed position. Like, I mean, obviously they did go to 3 because of that whole tiebreaker situation that happened between them, the Thunder, and the Nuggets. But I think that it was sort of I don't know, maybe there was something there. Maybe they were, kind of looking at it overall, like despite them getting to the Western Conference Finals, maybe there was something that was still lingering despite, Cat being able to prove that he had, he was able to kind of perform in, high pressure, high level situations. But maybe just like overall, it was kind of like, what, we're gonna move. We have essentially three centers. Maybe there's like a bit of a log jam there. You could argue that Randall doesn't necessarily solve that issue, but you could argue that him pairing with DiVincenzo sort of makes up for like the scoring of Towns. So I think in terms of maybe regular season success, I think they'll still be good. It will just depend on what the rotation is going to be going into the postseason. Because, I mean, this is assuming that they'll, continue that success and still be like a playoff team, which I fully expect, right? But it just in terms of how well that's going to work out, obviously is going to remain to be seen, but it's really, I think it is really shocking for Minnesota fans in particular, just considering they've had like the most success they've really ever had as a franchise for such a long time, and for that, for a core member of that group, you essentially your second best player to just kind of let go like that, really, before even trying to run it back, essentially, is pretty. I don't know. It's pretty. It's tough, man. That's really tough. I know it's. I've seen a lot of trades that have sort of been kind of at this level where you have like a player that has been with the franchise for such a long time, and it just doesn't really, it unfortunately doesn't really work out. I mean, I think the one that comes to mind is the DeMar DeRozan trade. I think that's one that a lot of other people are sort of pointing out as it being like and I guess this sort of applies to both teams. This applies to both the Knicks and the Timberwolves, where you had this, you drafted kind of the franchise player at that time, and he was integral to the, essentially elevating the team from from the trenches to eventually have some level of playoff success, but unfortunately not being able to, reach the pinnacle, which was the finals. And then once the DeRozan Kawhi trade did eventually happen, they did reach the top. They made it to the finals, and they won a championship. So I think that could sort of maybe be a potential comparison. I think that might be a good comparison, where in the case of like Randall, he was really sort of at the forefront, the driver of the Knicks finally finally getting to the playoffs after such a, like a decade long drought since like Carmelo. And then having, he wasn't, he was injured for this last playoff run, but he was integral for them to get to the playoffs in the, the last few years, kind of in the first place. So, just getting to that point and finally seeing some, even just like a modicum of success, I think, and then eventually having to move on from that, is really tough. It's really tough to do that, but it maybe in the vision of the of the New York front office, maybe this is sort of the final piece to get to the next level for New York. And maybe on the side of Minnesota, it might be the thing. It's a little different for sure, because it's not, it isn't like you're trading Towns for a better player necessarily, but it is for potential more sustained success, and also avoiding the additional costs at that level. You know what I mean? So it is. It's business. It's complicated. It sucks. It is really. I don't know. I feel for both franchises, and I feel for both fan bases, because it really is like you're letting go someone, or multiple personnel who have really meant a lot for your respective teams. Like it's tough to let go of both, just because of how much impact and how much of a even quote, you could like, legacy. I think that word gets thrown around quite a lot, but I think that for both Towns and for Randall, I think there is like some level of legacy to be had there. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's sort of difficult to really think about, what history is going to look like after their careers end. But I think that there is going to be a lot of respect that's going to be given to both of those players as it goes along. So I wouldn't really be too I don't know, I really wouldn't be too I think that there's a lot to really think about in terms of like, just like where things are going to end up in the future and what things are going to look like moving forward into kind of the next year and the next season. But in terms of just like the impact that they had as players, as personnel too. I mean, I think both. It seems like both have left like quite a lot, just a lot in terms of just like impact on the court, but also impact in kind of the communities of both New York and in like Minnesota for towns. So I think there's a lot to really dissect there, and I think there's a lot to look at it from sort of like a narrative perspective. And I think it'll be interesting seeing where those two teams go moving forward. I think that New York is definitely in a better position to be a title contender, especially in the East. I think, outside of Boston, it's probably going to be them that are going to be sort of in top contention. And I think they have like a pretty, a pretty tough, a pretty good, like, starting lineup, just kind of slotting Towns in there. So, I'll be very interested in seeing how they perform, but I expect them to be, I think the expectation is that they're going to be pretty damn good. How they stack up against, the Celtics, even the rest of the Eastern Conference, I think is gonna be interesting. But I do think that it wouldn't be too far off to see them as a potential Eastern Conference contender. Just such like a crazy, I don't know. It always, when these trades do happen, when one of these types of trades where it just involves like, very, high value players and everything, it always is like, it always like, it sends me in particular just like this, like a shock, like, oh, holy shit, I can't believe that actually happened. Like, is that like real? Like, I have to like look at it twice. But like once like the dust kind of settles, like if you just kind of think about things a little bit, like think about what the potential mindset is coming from management. Like, obviously there are instances where the general manager and whoever is sort of like, essentially pulling the shots, they do make like an egregious error in trading, like their best player for like nothing, like there are instances like that where it has happened for sure, but it's still, yeah, but I think in this case, it seems like both sides have some sort of idea of some sort of, projection in terms of what their future is gonna kind of look like. I mean, because like both both general managers are pretty. I think in the case of someone like Leon Rose, especially recently, has received a lot of kind of accolades because of the building of this team in terms of getting a OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and that kind of thing, and obviously Jalen Brunson. But it's and on the side of Minnesota, you have Tim Conley, who brought over Gobert, and that was kind of one of the more controversial trades, and in some instances it has sort of panned out well for them. And they so both have sort of like a pretty good track record, at least recently. So it's, is it going to be a blunder? Is this like a huge gamble for, I think it's more of a gamble for the Knicks, because they are letting go of some depth and everything, and are sort of like really putting, their chips into this, this very, highly powered offense and everything. On the Wolves side of things, it's much more just like, extending kind of things. I mean, it is still definitely a gamble. It's just letting go of your second best player. But, I don't know. It feels that there's the clear some decisions that were being made, even like I don't know, it feels like I don't know, it feels like something that has been sort of brewing in some instances. Cat trade rumors has been around for quite some time. And there was a lot of links that were being made between him and New York. But just the fact that the trigger got pulled is still crazy. This off season has been pretty, there's been some things that have happened with, Paul George going to the Sixers, obviously the Mikal Bridges trade. But outside of that, it's been pretty quiet for the most part. Like I really can't. I mean, Clay going to Dallas, but that was just more of just like, that was kind of like a sadder moment for me, and for Warriors fans. Outside of that, though, it's been not too much really has happened. I think all of the kind of the bigger trades and stuff already kind of happened during the regular season. But yeah, it's crazy, and apparently training camp happens on Monday, so just the timing on that and everything, and just like both of those teams having to try to gel together, it's gonna be something, man. It's gonna be something. But I am excited for the regular season that is coming up really soon in a few weeks, really. And yeah, I'll be kind of monitoring that. Maybe I'll catch some preseason games. We'll see. Yeah, their season is just coming up. I'm excited for some basketball. I think it's going to be, last year, overall, I thought it was a good regular season. It's just the playoffs were maybe a bit lackluster. But hopefully, there are some, there's going to be a bit more going on, going into this next season. And we get some some good teams come out, some good playoff matchups. Like there were really only like, I don't know, it's like a couple of 7-game series. Like really, it wasn't really, not a lot to go off of. And I didn't even really end up watching any of like I was busy at that time, but I didn't really watch any of like the conference finals or the finals or anything like that really. So I hope that I'm a bit more engaged going into the playoffs next year, but we'll see. Just let's get excited for the regular season first, and then we can kind of get into the rest of that later. I'm jumping too far ahead. Anyways, that's kind of that for sports stuff, basketball stuff. A lot going on there. I picked up Zelda. I picked up Echoes of Wisdom yesterday. I pre-ordered it from. This is not at all like an endorsement, but I picked it up from Best Buy. I think every retail place has different pre-order sets that come along with the game. I got mine in Best Buy, and I got this like little diorama, and it's pretty cute. It's kind of sort of acrylic diorama where you just kind of like slot in like Zelda and some things, and you have the box art is essentially kind of the background for this little diorama thing, and it's really cute. It's nice. I kind of have it sort of just sort of displayed in my room. It's a nice little piece. And I started playing the game last night. I didn't do like a ton. Well, I technically did like a whole dungeon. I did the first dungeon. It was pretty short, and it was a lot of fun. And I haven't really progressed that much more today, but I expect to be playing more later tonight. Because I really would like to. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far. It's really fun. It's nice to kind of get back into, sort of that 2D Zelda, gameplay. I've kind of missed that. It's been, I've mentioned this, but it's been a really long time since I've played, a 2D Zelda game, since like Link Between Worlds. So it just feels nice to kind of get that sort of top-down view and sort of be reminded of what makes these types of Zelda games really good outside of kind of the newer 3D ones. I think I've been seeing some discussions in terms of really the main issue, I think, with the game, because I really haven't had any, there's really nothing that I've spotted that's really irked me at all. But I think the only thing that I can really think of is the performance that is maybe hindering the experience a little bit. I personally haven't run into too many issues. It was most noticeable at the very first like area of the game, which is like the castle town of Hyrule Castle, where it was like stuttering and kind of going back from like, the frames per rate were kind of going up and down, and that was like a little distracting. But outside of that, just the rest of the game, I really haven't seen too many issues. Maybe some slowdowns here and there, but nothing to where it made me want to stop playing the game. Maybe some people are a bit more sensitive to that kind of thing, in terms of just kind of like maybe the visual, kind of the fidelity and stuff, just kind of messing up a little bit. That might be something that bothers you. If that's the case, then I don't know, maybe just look into, I don't know, maybe just like wait until maybe there's like a patch or something that comes. I don't know if that, I don't know if Nintendo is going to do anything about that. They're usually not very good about these kinds of things. Unfortunately, that's really one of the biggest drawbacks of Nintendo systems and Switch systems. And I think that might be, this is one of the big reasons for why, players like myself are looking forward to, a Switch 2 release, and hoping that will improve the performance of games, just Nintendo games across the board, and we don't have to worry about these little things affecting it. But outside of that, I really haven't, I haven't had very many issues. I could see the part that maybe could be, something, is like sorting through the echoes, which is essentially kind of the main, the main powers that Zelda uses, and going through kind of the menuing and that sort of thing, which is an issue that was sort of carried over from Tears of the Kingdom. But I even when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, I never, it was maybe like only a few moments where I was kind of annoyed by, having to sort through the menu wheel to find the item that I wanted to use. But I'm generally like, I don't know, I'm a bit more patient when it comes to those kinds of things. It didn't really fully bother me, but I totally understand why other people might be kind of put off by that. But I've just been really having a lot of fun. It's nice to really have this game have much more of a focus on the puzzles and kind of the problem solving aspect of things. So far the puzzles that I have come across are pretty simple. But I have had, there was like one instance where I wanted to get to a certain ledge, and I had to have a certain combination of echoes in order to get to that point. And that was a little tricky, for sure. And I expect that there's going to be more of those kinds of puzzles and problem solving, where it's like you have to figure out like what combination of echoes really work. How do you make it to, how do you get to like a certain thing? I think there was actually, now that I think about it, there's actually a point where I was like, I had just had no idea how to get this like one treasure box, and I spent like maybe a few minutes just like really thinking about, okay, which one really works, and it ended up just being like this one echo that worked. And I was like, it was right there. So I am gonna have those moments where the answer is a little bit more obvious than what what I initially thought was going to be, what it was going to be. But it's fun that way. It's fun to kind of, rack your brains, a little to try to solve something. I think that it having it be too simple is, kind going to be a bit of a detractor. I don't want it to be too simple. I want to, I want to I want to work through these puzzles to try to get to a certain solution, whether it's my solution with kind of the open-ended nature of maybe how these puzzles are set up. But maybe find, the best solution to get to, I think is pretty satisfying. And, yeah, that's really kind of the core of the game, I feel, in terms of in terms of the gameplay and everything. The combat is not the craziest thing, but I could see it becoming more dynamic as it goes along in terms of, which enemies you can use as echoes, how you want to manage the, kind of the energy bar, how that comes into play essentially is so far, you get kind of the sword fighter ability, which is essentially you turn into Link in a certain sense, and you're able to fight with a sword, but it's very limited, just so you don't get overpowered. So it's fun. It's fun to kind of manage those two gameplay styles of essentially managing your horde of enemies, your echoes, and then also utilizing your own kind of skills as well. So that's going to be I'm interested in seeing how that kind of works out as I progress. But it's such a charming game. The characters, the enemy characters and the human, the NPC characters, and of course Zelda. Like everybody is like so cute. It's like these little chibi, character models, and it's all really adorable. I didn't play. I mentioned that I haven't played the Link's Awakening remake. I've heard that that's also really cute as well. But this is my first time kind of playing through with this art style, and I really it's really nice. It really kind of adds to sort of maybe the more lighthearted aspect of this game in particular, and just really it being very, very bright and colorful, and I really like that. I really like kind of that. I really like the art style. I think it complements this particular game really well. But yeah, just having a lot of fun. There was a really interesting, I don't even really want to give it away. I mean, it's really minor, but I thought it was really interesting what they did here. So in this world, Link, Zelda's, the main character, you control her. But Link is also present as well, and there's a diary entry in one of the NPC characters who essentially helped raise Link, or he's like a blacksmith or something, and he helped create create his sword. There's a diary entry in his like little basement area. And if you read the entries, it kind of tells you, it gives you like an explanation to why Link is not able to speak, which is really interesting. I feel like this is like the first time, I don't know if I'm wrong in that, but because this is essentially, kind of the first Zelda game where, she is like the playable character, it's almost they had to create like a little reason for why Link isn't able to talk. It was like saying that he was affected by the rifts or something like that when he was a kid, and he just, because of that, he became mute, which is really interesting. It's such like a fascinating kind of twist from, not a twist, but it's just like I'm curious like how that's gonna maybe carry over into the story. It might just be one of those things where it's just like a little thing that provides kind of like a reason for why Link is not able to speak in this game in particular. But I'm curious if it's something that would like carry over into the other games as well. I have no idea. I don't know if that's gonna really necessarily work out, but I I thought that was really just like a nice little touch, to give something for the fans of the series in a way. Yeah, outside of that, I'm just really looking forward to continuing playing it, and this is just like a really nice game to kind of pop up at this time in particular. And yeah, I will be playing this a little bit more later tonight. So looking forward to that. Anyways, I think I'm gonna leave off at that for this week. Some nice little surprises, some nice little exciting stuff happened. Excited to just get back into basketball when that does really come up. The discussions for teams. I'm very interested in hearing what teams are going to be doing, other teams in the association, including the Warriors, how they're going to kind of ramp things up. And yeah, that's going to be coming up next month. And then, of course, I'm going to talk more Zelda as I progress. And if there's any other gaming, sports-related news that comes up, I will talk about that as well. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.